This resource will briefly discuss some of the ways to distinguish between auditory observations of red-eyed vireo, blue-headed vireo, Philadelphia vireo, yellow-throated vireo, and warbling vario, and we will primarily focus on song identification. If you haven't seen these graphs on the right before, they're called sonograms or spectrograms. They can be useful for learning if you're more of a visual learner, which is why they're included here. Sonograms are essentially like reading sheet music. You read from left to right as time goes on, and higher pitches are at the top vertically, and lower pitches are at the bottom. The sounds or the words that I will be putting to bird songs are called mnemonics, and they generally help me remember songs after I've already learned them and I'm in the field and I haven't heard the song in a while. So first off, we have the red-eyed vireo. Red-eyed vireos sing a song that sounds like it's almost asking a question and answering itself, or just stating a few facts in succession. It'll sing a phrase, then a short pause, then sing another phrase, as if saying, here I am, at the top, over here, Virio. You don't just hear one note, you hear a few notes slurred together. So let's listen. Each phrase is a musical slur, then a break, and then another musical whistled phrase. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Philadelphia Virios sound very similar to red-eyed Virios, and I would personally track them down to try to get a visual identification if you can. So let's just listen to it, play it, and then we'll talk about it. Like red-eyed Virios, Philadelphia Virios have a quick phrase, then a pause, before doing another quick phrase, and then a pause and rinse and repeat. Philadelphia Virios tend to have a little bit more of a weaker or quieter song than red-eyed Virios. It's a bit higher pitched and a bit more choppy. The individual phrases are a little bit shorter and choppier. You can even see on the sonogram areas where the phrase, it's not as joined together. It's not as perfectly slurred. There are slight breaks in that phrase. It's not as smooth, but it is very similar. Again, I personally would try to get a visual identification if you can. One important thing to note is also the range separation of red-eyed vireo and Philadelphia vireos. As you can see on the bottom right, Philadelphia vireos are essentially absent in southern Ontario. And so if you do hear one of these vireos singing in southern Ontario, it's most likely a red-eyed vireo. But once you transition into the central and northern Ontario regions and you hear a Virio singing, visual identification is very much preferred to song identification. And you can learn more about that at birdsontario.org/Virios, where it will do a little bit more of a distinguishing features between red-eyed Virios and Philadelphia Virios. And you can also view that link in the description below this video. On to the blue-headed vireo, which also sounds similar to the red-eyed and Philadelphia vireos in that it has a similar pattern of having a slurred phrase and then a pause until the next phrase as it continues. The blue-headed vireo song generally has longer pauses. It's a little bit more of a slower song, and I find it's lower in pitch too with a bit of more of a sneezy quality. Sounds a bit sad, a bit drawn out, as if saying, here I am, over here. I'm a sad Virio. And if it's sad, you can maybe associate that with the color blue, and then you have a blue-headed Virio. So let's listen to this slower song, sad blue Virio. Long pause. Slower, sadder, blue-headed Virio. Time for a fun comparison quiz. I'll play each song in succession from song 1, and then song 2, and then song 3, And you'll have to guess whether it's a red-eyed vireo, a blue-headed vireo, or a Philadelphia vireo. So, song 1. Song 2. And song 3. Did you get them? From left to right, you have Philadelphia Virio on the far left for the first song, blue-headed Virio in the middle, and then red-eyed Virio on the right for the third song. These songs are hard. The red-eyed Virio song has some nice slurred phrases, which we can listen to here. Then you have the Philadelphia Virio. A little bit more choppy. And then the blue-headed Virio, the sadder, longer pause, slower song. These birds are hard, even when they can sing faster or slower, even amongst themselves. So don't get discouraged, it can be tricky. Next is the yellow-throated vireo for individuals in southern and southeastern Ontario. Similar phrasing to the other vireos we've discussed, but it's a much raspier song quality. So let's listen first and then we'll discuss. So it almost has kind of a scratchy, sore throat kind of sound. Maybe it needs some yellow throat lozenges for the yellow-throated vireo. Think about listening for it saying, here I am, over here, 3-8. It has this kind of voice cracking quality to it. It's a much raspier song. So let's listen one more time. So say you're comparing the yellow-throated vireo to the red-eyed vireo. You'll hear, those similar phrasing, those slurred notes, a pause, and slurred notes, but the quality will be much raspier. And listen for those 3/8 in the mix. So first, that raspier yellow-throated vireo. Three-eight. And then the red-eyed vireo. Really lacks that raspy song of the yellow-throated vireo. Lastly, you have the Warbling Vario. It's a very different song. I've heard the mnemonic explained as if the bird is saying to a caterpillar, if I see you, I will seize you and I'll squeeze you till you squirt. So that may or may not be useful. But before we listen, you can just see visually on the sonogram that the phrases are much longer. They're drawn out. There isn't as many slurred notes, and then a pause, and then another slurred notes. The song is much longer. It's full of musical notes that run for a much longer period of time. So let's listen. So it's a longer phrase of slurred notes that rapidly alternate between high and low pitches, and it often ends on a little bit more of a higher note than the notes preceding the end. There are also some scolding calls that warbling and red-eyed Virios specifically use that are very raspy and they even just feel aggressive. You know that you're making them mad. But those won't be covered in this video, so I just recommend looking those up and just familiarizing yourself with them. Vireos are incredible birds with their amazing slightly hooked bills, and I hope you're able to see and hear many of these species during this breeding season. Good luck!